What's up, guys? I'm nobody special, and I am remiss because there has been a lot going on in the car market these last few months, and it's something I have not covered at all. And I mentioned to my moderator, Mish, not too long ago, how I needed to do a car video, and he said, you got to bring on Above My Pay Grade because Above My Pay Grade has been following the car market very closely. So here he is, the first time on the channel. I have got Eric from Above My Pay Grade. How you doing today, Eric?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on, Jack.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for being here. So, tell me what's going on. We are seeing car prices come down quite substantially, especially used car prices, and it's starting to make a real dent in some of these inflation readings. It's actually one of the most disinflationary forces in CPI right now is car prices coming down. So, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so as you know, it has a massive effect on the CPI print. And I started looking into it kind of anecdotally. I had bought a car in February of 2020, a Nissan Frontier, and I sold it to the exact same dealer I bought it from a year later for 7,000 more than I bought it for. So, so I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, I've never even heard of this before.
But
Cars are
isn't it
depreciating asset. Yeah,
isn't it the other way
so
around? The car, when you
yeah,
drive it off the lot, it's supposed to be
right.
worth 7,000 less as soon as you drive it.
Exactly. And so I'm like, so this is crazy, and this isn't just a one-off because I've heard it from other dealerships, and we all heard about the chip shortage and yada yada yada. So I mainly focus on what has changed in 2020 and 2021 that wasn't there before. Because we all know in the car market, if you go to a car dealership, they try to upsell you on all kinds of things, extended warranties, yada yada yada. Do you want covers on your your air system? Do you want car sensor? But whatever it is, formats. They try to upsell you. So it's always been that way. But what was different in 2020 and 2021 is what people used as collateral and how they signed on for loans. So if you think back to 2008 during the great financial crisis, if you've ever seen The Big Short, you had people who didn't have a lot of income who had four or five houses who were doing kind of crazy jobs on the side. And these people had these ninja loans, no income, no credit, no job, blah, 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 blah. And in 2020 and 2021, very similar to the great financial crisis, people were using PPP loans, number one, which was forgiven by the government, to make down payments on all kinds of cars, including high-end luxury cars. So they're making down payments. And these these dealerships weren't really verifying their income because there was loosening credit standards, and there was money flowing like you wouldn't believe, as everyone knows on this channel. But then these people would immediately buy these cars and then not have to pay on them. So they pretend that they were going to, but legally they were allowed to not pay. And so now these bills are coming due. And a lot of these people, including on luxury cars, anecdotally, they're going to the repo lot and they had never been registered. So people have been driving them for 2 years and they still have paper tags on them. So the big difference between now and the car market of the last 20 years is car dealerships like franchise stores. If you look at your average like Toyota dealership, Ford dealership, they have somebody's name on it and it says Ford. So it's a franchise dealership. And if you remember, when you would go to these stores, they said we had a chip shortage. And so the dealer, like Ford, would allow them to up their used car numbers. And so these places like Ford, Toyota, and yada yada, they didn't have as many new cars coming in. They had to move product. So they're allowed to start selling more used cars. And these kind of dealerships make a lot of money on the back end. Everyone hates going to a car dealership. But once you say, hey, I want to buy that car, there's 15 different add-ons at the end. And so people were buying used cars, 100,000 miles, for like 115, 120% loan to value because of all these add-ons, and the banks were allowing it. And now, since this market is crashing, they're way upside down on the car. And if they were to refinance, number one, they can't sell it because it's not worth what they owe on it. Number two, they can't refinance because interest rates have gone through the roof. So they're kind of stuck.
So, history doesn't repeat itself, it often rhymes. We've got an easy money situation created by the Federal Reserve. We've got PPP loans. So the money starts flowing, and what does the money do? It inflates an asset bubble. And while it was doing the same thing to bonds and stocks, it was also doing it to cars. And you mentioned a PPP loan. So somebody takes out a PPP loan, as long as they didn't lay off their workforce, that never needs to be paid back. So the down payment on the car was free money. And then they claim COVID difficulty, so they never had to pay a single payment on that car. They didn't even register it. They never paid the tax and tags on it. So basically, government easy money printing just gave these people 2 years of driving a luxury car for nothing. And now the banks, I guess, someone's holding the note on this car. So the financial institutions are probably taking a bath on these loans. And we have this huge inventory glut all of a sudden because all these cars are getting repoed now.
Yep. And if you look at, I'm following some guys on YouTube like Lucky Lopez, who's into the repo business, and his kind of gauge is what repo companies are doing and how much real estate they're starting to buy. So they're not just leasing real estate, they're buying real estate because they're basing it off of 2008 numbers. They're saying, hey, this repo madness the repossession of cars is going to last 2 or 3 years because the bubble was so massive and the malinvestment was so massive because money was flowing. And if you mentioned luxury cars, imagine the person who couldn't afford it, but magically could afford a Rolls Royce that they're driving for free for 2 years with paper tags on it. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't take care of it. But when this vehicle, this luxury vehicle goes to wholesalers, people who buy those cars, people who buy Rolls Royce, Lamborghini, they want it in pristine condition. So the banks are holding the note on the car, and if they're going to resell it, it's going to be half of what it's actually worth because it wasn't really potentially taken care of. And then not to mention, like I said before, people who are buying used cars because used cars was this massive bubble. They don't obviously last as long as new cars. So gas is going up. Repairs and all that other stuff. If you buy a used Toyota Camry with 100,000 miles on it and you owe 130% loan to value, how you get out of that? You really can't. And we were talking before we started recording, you got to think about, I'm thinking about the domino effects of this because kind of reverse of 2008, the loan standards on houses are a little bit more stringent. Some people had to pay, put money down on their house, yada, yada, yada. So let's say they own a house and they bought a used car in 2020 and 2021. They lose their job. Their car gets repossessed. That's going to obviously take a hit to their credit. Maybe or maybe not they can buy another car, but that's really going to make them think about selling their house. Because if they sell their house, maybe the only reason they would sell is to pull the cash out. But if they sell their house and their credit is in the tank, how are they going to buy another one? They probably won't be able to. So that would motivate me if I was in their shoes to not sell, to do anything I can to stay in the house I'm at, especially if I refinance in 2021 or 2020 and I have to buy a new house at 6-7%. I'd be, and probably again they don't have a job either, so it's going to be a
Yeah,
lot
so
harder.
not only do you have rising interest rates to contend with just nationwide, now you've got your own personal credit score negatively affected by a car being repossessed. So home ownership, if you're not already a homeowner, is now further out of reach. Or if you are, you're right, if you're forced to sell your home, the odds of you getting into something else slim to none at that point. So we could see potentially knock-on effects in housing from this, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and then you got to think young people too. So young people, what have they not had to pay on? And I go off of incentives. So if you could afford your rent payment but you didn't have to pay it, there was a lot of people, believe it or not, that just didn't pay, just stiffed their landlord, and then they used that money to buy a vehicle. Not to mention this massive horde of millennials who are college educated didn't have to pay on their student loans either. That's starting again on January 1st. So all this is kind of coming to a head as we keep raising interest rates. The job market is tightening and they didn't have to make all these payments. So they could make the payment on the car because they didn't have to pay rent, they didn't have to pay their student loans, and now all of a sudden all those bills are coming due again.
Yeah, everybody felt rich in 2020 in the first half of 2021, right? We were getting the stimmy payments on the regular. Inflation was, at least at that point, it was low. Everybody was doing well. We were locked inside, so we weren't spending money on anything. Well, now that's changed. Now the price of food, fuel, rent, everything is going up. And now the car's getting repoed. So how long do you think this is going to take to work its way through the system? Or when do we see whatever normal looks like anymore? When do we see that finally in the car market?
So from what I've read, like a lot of times these repossessions take a while. So it's not like you could take possession of the car as the bank and then tomorrow you can sell it to a wholesaler. It doesn't work that way. Oftentimes you have to sit on it for a year. So I would say from what I've read, you're going to start seeing, you're already seeing drops in used car prices, right? But you have this bubble where even if you go to a dealership today, they're still wanting like 20% over MSRP for the high demand cars like the Ford Bronco. But that realization that no one's coming, they drop it by 2% one week and then still nobody, 2% the next week. I think it's going to take about 6 months to work its way through where they're like, okay, demand has fallen off of the cliff and we now have to take a loss on even new vehicles.
So it sounds like, regardless, let me rephrase that. Depending on your personal and your individual situation, if you can hold out a couple of more months before making a car purchase, it sounds like that's probably the right move at this point with these market conditions.
Correct. And
And
and even and I've always said, and I kind of agree with very few things I agree with Dave Ramsey on, but cars in America are the status symbol of the middle class. And in America, we create this. People have have cars that are more expensive than their houses, which you don't see in a lot of other countries. So if you look at it as a utility, get you from point A to point B. If you're a car person, that's one thing. If it's your hobby, but if you look at it as a utility, that'll help you out as well.
you mentioned buying real estate just to put these repossessed vehicles on, right? Buying additional lots to store them. So it sounds like they've got a pretty big inventory glut on their hands. It's not something that's going to work its way through the system very quickly. So sounds like this could be a while.
Yes, from what I've heard from Lucky Lopez's channel, '08 took a long time, about 2 to 3 years, to really see those prices start to go back up. So they're steadily going down, kind of like real estate did, because you got to look at people's priorities. What are people going to sell first if they have to get out of something, their car? And what's unique about this specific scenario is there was about 2 years where people were paying over sticker value sticker value on their vehicles. They haven't done that in mass like they did in the last 2 years.
All right. That's fantastic stuff. Thank you very much for the insight, Eric. The channel is above my pay grade on YouTube. I'm going to put a link down in the description. We're going to be keeping an eye on this channel. I have a feeling we are going to be seeing big things from Eric. So head over there and give him a subscribe. I told him we are going to get him monetized off of this interview. So head over to Eric's channel and tell him nobody sent you. And until next time, folks, live small and dream big.